Imagine sitting at home on a quiet Saturday morning, sipping coffee, when a knock at your door turns your world upside down. That's exactly what happened to Daniel Carter, a respected homeowner in Willow Creek Estates. When he opened his door, three men in cheap uniforms with shiny badges claimed they were HOA police. They said they had authority to arrest him for violating community rules. The neighbors watched as the men puffed out their chests and tried to drag Daniel away. What they didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just another black homeowner. He was one of the most feared FBI agents in the country. And this time, the hunters had no idea they would prey. Willow Creek Estates was a kind of neighborhood that looked perfect from the outside, manicured lawns, a fancy clubhouse, and neighbors who seemed friendly enough. But underneath, the HOA was notorious for abusing power. They fined residents for grass an inch too long, for parking slightly outside the lines, even for kids leaving bikes in driveways. Daniel Carter had lived there for 3 years. He was quiet, private, and kept to himself. His home was immaculate, his lawn trimmed like clockwork. But some neighbors didn't like him. To them, a black man in a nice house didn't fit the picture of their perfect little community. And at the center of the harassment was Greg Simmons, the HOA vice president. Greg had a reputation for bullying, and Daniel was his latest target. It started small. A notice about his garbage cans being too visible, a fine for a non-regulation basketball hoop in his driveway. Even though it had been there since he moved in, Daniel ignored the nonsense, paying no attention. But Greg didn't like being ignored. That's when the intimidation escalated. Neighbors reported seeing Greg boasting at the clubhouse bar that he had a special task force to deal with people who don't belong. And just a week later, Daniel's doorbell rang. Standing outside were 3 men in dark uniforms, patches stitched on that read, HOA Enforcement Division. Their badges gleamed under the morning sun. "Mr. Carter," one of them barked, "you are under arrest for multiple violations of HOA code." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Under arrest? The HOA doesn't have police." "We do now," Greg smirked, stepping out from behind them. "And you're coming with us." Neighbors peeked through blinds and cracked doors. Phones were recording. Whispers filled the street. The fake officers moved closer, one reaching for his cuffs. But Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back against his doorframe and smiled. "Gentlemen," Daniel said calmly, "do you know impersonating a federal officer carries a 3-year prison sentence?" The men froze. Greg scoffed. "You don't know what you're talking about. We're enforcing the law." Daniel stepped forward, his voice suddenly firm, commanding, the kind of voice that made even hardened criminals shake. "You're right about one thing, Greg. I do know the law." Then he reached into his wallet and flashed his badge. Not a fake, not an HOA trinket, but the gold and blue credentials of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gasps echoed across the street. Greg's smirk vanished. The fake cop stepped back, eyes wide, realizing they just tried to arrest the very man who spent years hunting criminal organizations. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Here's what's going to happen," he said coldly. "You're going to put your hands where I can see them. And then you're going to explain very carefully why you think a homeowners association can stage an armed arrest." The men stammered. One dropped his fake cuffs. Another muttered something about just following orders. Daniel already had his phone recording. He calmly dialed a number. "Dispatch, Agent Carter here. I've got 3 suspects impersonating federal officers. Send a unit." Greg's face went pale. "Wait, you can't do this. This is private property." Daniel stared him down. "You broke into my property, and you just tried to commit kidnapping. You're done, Greg." Within minutes, real police cruisers rolled into the neighborhood. Sirens wailed, lights flashing. The fake HOA cops were cuffed and shoved into squad cars, faces pale with shame. Greg tried to talk his way out of it, shouting about community authority and just doing his job. But no one believed him. The officers read him his rights as neighbors watched in stunned silence. Some whispered, "I can't believe Greg went that far." Others muttered, "Daniel's FBI? No wonder he wasn't scared." The video recording spread like wildfire across social media. Local news picked it up. HOA president caught using fake police to harass homeowner. Victim revealed as FBI agent. The fallout was swift. Greg was charged with conspiracy, harassment, and aiding impersonation of law enforcement. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves, but it was too late. Their corruption was exposed. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't brag. He simply shook his head at how far hate and arrogance had gone. Neighbors who once avoided him now approached with respect, and maybe even a little fear. They realized the quiet man on the corner wasn't someone to push around. He was someone who had dedicated his life to justice. In the end, the fake HOA police thought they were in control, but they made one fatal mistake. They tried to arrest the law itself. And Daniel Carter? He proved that sometimes the real badge of power isn't the one you flash to intimidate, but the one that stands for truth, dignity, and justice.